Hi everyone. I'm making this video to show you how you could prepare a USB port for your emergency preparedness kit. Why I'm making this videos is to help you perhaps recharge your phone or operate devices that run from a USB port in the event of a power failure. So we're encouraged to be able to take care of ourselves for the initial 72 hours. And that's really my motivation in doing this video. So a few months ago, I was given this 12-volt battery. It's roughly 3 inches or 7.5 centimeters tall. It's roughly 8 inches or approximately 20 centimeters this way. And then it's approximately 2 inches this way in the width. And that's approximately 5 centimeters. This is rated as a 12-volt, 7 amp hour, 20-hour battery. So what that means is this battery is designed for a 12-volt output at a draw of 7 amps, or in terms of watts, that would be 12 times it by 7. So I think that's 96 watts. I'll have to check the math after the video's done, for 20 hours. So what I've done is wired this USB port to it. So the methodology of this was actually pretty straightforward. What you would do is crimp 2 pairs of wires to the end. So 2 positives, the red, and 2 negatives, the black. And then one of the wires would go to this 12-volt female end. What this is for is a 12-volt power supply to recharge this. So this power supply is actually rated for 12 volts at 500 milliamps. So it's like a trickle charger. It would take several days to recharge a battery like this. That's my personal preference. Instead of fast and hard, I prefer slower so the battery doesn't heat up and become sulfated. The heat that happens in a battery when it's recharged is what kills it eventually as it's charged and recharged and recharged. So you've got your 2 ends crimped together to whatever the terminal connectors are for the battery. And then this is the 12-volt 5.5 millimeter end here that matches this end. So this is the female end here, and the power supply has the male end. And then this is 16 gauge wire, and this is an inline waterproof fuse. So I bought that component on eBay. You can get them many places. I chose waterproof for an outdoor application because I'm using this for my video camera and I potentially could get it wet. The area where I live has lots of water, so I wanted it waterproof. I've put a 2 amp fuse in here, and the reason for 2 amp is this USB port is rated for 1 amp, so if it drew a little bit more than that, then the fuse would go. And the power of the USB port and the fuse is going to depend on the gauge of wire that you use. More amps needs thicker wire. one other word about the wire is this is braided wire. Why that's significant is braided wire does well in bending. So, the fuse is soldered in. It's added to the positive wire. And then I also included this on-off switch, just for extra control. This part here is sold at a big box store. It's called an inline toggle switch. And then this USB port is purchased off, I got it off eBay. It's a car USB charger where it goes in the cigarette lighter. What I did was took the plastic housing off of it, soldered in the positive and the negative wires, where in this particular one, the positive was in the center and the outside was the negative. That's how this was wired. And then I've put heat shrink tubing around the edge as well as electrical tape, because this was meant for support and needing to be supported. After I took it apart, I had taken the structural integrity out of it. So I've put that back first with the electrical tape wrapping it around, and then heat shrink tubing taking on the shape of this to keep it solid. And that's really all. So your shopping list is a female 12 volt 5.5 millimeter connector, the 12 volt power supply with a matching 5.5 male adapter, and the right plug for your country. This is the US standard. Right in here are the terminal connectors. This one uses spade connectors, and then I've just encased it in epoxy, and I'm going to put on liquid electrical tape tomorrow just to give it an extra protection for waterproof. This is some 16-2 wire. This red and black you see in here, that's also heat shrink tubing. And it is 4 millimeter heat shrink tubing, so when it shrinks down, it's the size of the individual wires. I wanted to make it painfully obvious which is positive and which is negative, so that if this is ever, if I pass on or I pass this battery on to somebody else, it's clear what is what. I don't want to set in motion someone being hurt. The inline fuse is for vehicles or boats. You could search for waterproof inline fuse. This switch is rated for 120 volts at 3 amps. So for my application of 12 volts at 1 amp, it is safe to use. It's important to make sure that you are doing the math calculations correctly. If you run more electricity through this on-off switch than what it's designed for, it will cause an electrical fire. The way these work on the inside is you cut the wire, the positive part, in half, and then strip a little bit of the wire, and it just screws into 2 terminal screws, and then the wires join together depending on if the toggle switch has been pressed or not. And then you're just buying a USB port. So the USB port was $1, the heat shrink tubing was $3, the red electrical tape was 67 cents, the toggle switch was $8, this inline waterproof switch, the fuse was $2, the wire cost me about $1 for this, and the spade connectors were $1. Then whatever battery you choose to go with it. the battery is going to be the expensive component. And then what you'll need to do is remember to periodically top up the battery power. So recharging is a matter of taking the power supply and then just pushing it in. And then of course this end goes to the wall to let it charge and get back to its full 12 volts. I hope this is of some help to you. I do want to remind you to use the advice of a licensed, reputable electrician when doing a project like this. Electricity is something to be respected and not to mess around with. I just want to end with two final notes. I epoxied this onto the battery just so it'd be neat, like it'd be a neat package keeping it together. And it's just onto the housing of it. And with the epoxy, I just roughed up the surface with a little bit of sandpaper so the epoxy would hold. And then the same with the underside of this connector. And then when I put it on here, I oriented the positive side with the positive on this. And it's clearly marked here that this side's positive and the other side's negative. So it's just a lot of fiddling. This took about 2 hours to do. But now that it's done, it's well worth it. And certainly if the power was out, I could recharge a phone on this until the power came back on, especially if it was a severe storm that was going to take a few days. I hope this is helpful to you. Thanks for this time that you spent with me today. Bye for now.